If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Good morning, Dan. And in for Amy J this morning is Chicago Tribune columnist, the renowned John Kass. John,
good man.
Yes. John, President Trump sat down with Maria Bartiromo over the weekend for a discussion, a range of topics, including the intensity of criticism leveled in his direction and the back and forth between Americans on the issues of immigration and the family separation policy, particularly against the backdrop of the horrific incident last week, the murder of 5 staffers of the Capital Gazette newspaper in Annapolis. And here's what Trump had to say about some of his more vociferous and exorcised critics.
I was just going to say that. The 28-year-old socialist that just beat out Joe Crowley says abolish ICE. And get this. Here we see your lovely press secretary, Sarah Sanders, getting asked to leave a restaurant. We see Peter Fonda, Robert De Niro having Trump syndrome. They're going crazy. All of this vitriol in this country. As the commander-in-chief, as the president of this great country, what can you do to bring us together?
Well, some of them do it for publicity. I hate to say it. Some of them do it for publicity. Now, the Hen restaurant I thought was terrible with Sarah. I thought it was terrible.
It's all terrible.
I think some of the things that are said are terrible. And, you know, it's our people are so incredible. You know, there's probably never been a base in the history of politics in this country like my base. I hope the other side realizes that they better just take it easy. They better just take it easy. Because some of the language used, some of the words used, even some of the radical ideas, I really think they're very bad for the country. I think they're actually very dangerous for the country.
So, of course, members of the D.C. press corps picking up on the critics better take it easy with my base as some sort of veiled assertion that violence could ensue, and so Trump is encouraging violence again, much as Jennifer Rubin from the Washington Post sort of blamed Trump in part for that massacre at the Capital Gazette newspaper when she was on Bill Maher show over the weekend.
A lot of pearl clutching. I'm tired of the pearl clutching, and I can't wait to listen to the next guest.
All right. With that segue, Salena Zito, Washington Examiner reporter, New York Post columnist, CNN contributor, and author of the new book, The Great Revolt Inside the Populist Coalition, Reshaping American Politics. Salena, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me. I did not know that he was being criticized about saying let's take it easy, and that people were turning it into, sort of projecting themselves rather than maybe taking him at his word. Just maybe it just meant take it easy.
Like relax, yeah. Right.
Be nice. It's important to be nicer. I say that on Twitter a lot. Sometimes the reactions and the words that are used in response to that sort of stuns me because it isn't being nice.
Well, yeah, so they're sort of projecting, right, as you said, projecting themselves onto it and interpreting everything Trump says to, in a light least favorable to him. And the question that was put out by Dan Henninger over the weekend, the Wall Street Journal, particularly with respect to all of the rallies that were held around the country and some of the signs and the abolish ICE rhetoric and so forth. The question, he says, is the question of the moment. Can the Democratic Party control its left? It seems like we're getting an answer to that based on what we saw over the weekend.
Well, absolutely. And just as the Republicans were sort of having growing pains with their populist coalition, the Democrats, and I've been writing about this for years, that the most energized, most active, most vocal portion of their party is much further left than the typical sort of Democratic platform. Yes, the Democratic platform has gone left since Al Gore ran, but the activists on the side right now that are really engaged since Trump won are either further left than the platform. In particular, as you said, getting rid of ICE, when I saw New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand say, that on CNN the other day, I was sort of shocked that she didn't have this understanding of what ICE does. Not only does it protect our border, but it also protects the people that come across illegally. Mm-hmm. They keep them safe. They keep them guarded, whether they're putting them in a facility or getting them back across the border. They serve as these protectors. And I just find it sort of stunning that there's this lack of knowledge from a U.S. Senator.
What does it say about the Democratic Party that their most activist base is almost, seems to me they're devouring the centrists or whatever, the liberals, just as the populist, as the Tea Party and others devoured the Bush, white shoe Republican crowd. It just seemed like it's happening on there because they lost credibility. The Republicans lost credibility with their voters, and obviously it looks like the Democrats have lost credibility with their, left wing.
So this was outlined in the Great Revolt. Today's populism is on the right. It's a sort of healthy skepticism of all things big. On the left, it is more of a stark revolution against all things big on their side of the aisle, which includes the establishment. And this is, look, New York, the Bronx is not the only place where a DSA member won. I had a story about this today in the Washington Examiner. In Pittsburgh, 3 moderate public servants, Democratic public servants who have been in office for years and have been good, sort of stewards of the communities, the state and Senate seats that they represent, were all thrown out by DSA members in the primary in Pennsylvania in May. That sort of went unnoticed, but that's kind of a big deal. It's Pittsburgh, right? So it's not just in New York. It is also, there are fielding candidates everywhere. They feel empowered right now. The Democratic Socialists in America feel empowered now by their wins, so they're going for more local races. And when you see that happen in local races, it's inevitable that it starts to happen in then congressional seats, in governor seats, and in House seats. Maybe they don't win, but maybe they get through a primary, and that's that message that they sort of espouse is something that the Democrats then have to either reject or get behind, and that's their challenge right now.
Yeah, we've been seeing that happen in Chicago for the last several cycles as well. Your colleague at the New York Post, Paul Sperry, had an interesting piece over the weekend about this idea, Obama has disappeared, sort of debunking it, suggesting that Obama is behind the scenes, pulling a lot of levers, meeting regularly with Tom Perez, meeting regularly with Eric Holder on the issue of redistricting, using OFA, Organizing for America, to advance things like all of these rallies that were held around the nation over the weekend. Is that your sense of it, that Obama is very much engaged? He's been willing to be obviously publicly critical of Trump, but he's even more engaged than that in terms of continuing to sort of be a shadow leader of the Democrat Party.
Yeah, he absolutely is. People just aren't paying attention. He's in particularly been working with Eric Holder on these gerrymandering and redistricting, and they won in Pennsylvania. Our entire congressional delegation was just and congressional lines were completely just thrown out, breaking a 200-year precedent on how these lines are picked. The problem for Democrats is, or the problem for Obama, I think, is that under his watch, he was not a party builder. And so they lost, 1,900 seats between 2009 and 2016, down ballot seats. We're talking about state legislative races, governor's races, House races, Senate races. So he wasn't a party builder while he's in office. it is interesting to see how he's poking at the system to win. So he's trying to win through changing the lines as opposed to having better messages. That's very telling about how he sees victory should look.
She is Salena Zito, Washington Examiner reporter, New York Post columnist, CNN contributor, and author. She's very busy. The book, The Great Revolt, Inside the Populist Coalition, Reshaping American Politics. Salena, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me on.
And she joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Your business